Hello and welcome back to Therapy Wise, everyone. So, I have decided to do another video podcast, and we will see. Maybe I'll do them all via video as well. So, if you're listening on a podcast player and want to watch the video, you can click on the link below this episode. I'll link to the YouTube channel. And if you want to just listen to the audio, that's all good too. So, this is the first episode of 2025. Very excited to be back. I had been doing a series of the pillars of my signature methodology, the mastery paradigm. And then I took a little pause from that series to do a couple of episodes, one about setting up leaders for 2025, and then my year in review episode, which is always my favorite episode. And now I'm back to doing the episodes on the pillars of the mastery paradigm because I get so many questions about the mastery paradigm. I've done a couple episodes, the work that I do, then the work that I do part two, and now this is more of a deep dive into all of the different aspects of my work so that anyone who's interested can learn more and potentially apply to work with me. So today's episode is on what I consider to be the foundation of what I do and the most important part of my work, which is spiritual initiation. And probably a number of you listening don't know what that is. So it will be an interesting episode to learn all about it. And it's honestly one of my favorite topics. And it's also very esoteric and vague and hard to describe. So I'm going to first start by saying, a number of years ago, I was listening to one of my favorite spiritual teachers at the time. This was probably at least 10 years ago, maybe longer. And she began talking about initiation. And I had no idea what she was talking about, but everything in me just lit up and I was transfixed and covered in goosebumps. And I was just like, that's what I'm going to do. And honestly, ever since that time, I have been working toward doing spiritual initiations in my work. And now I do that as a huge part of my mastery paradigm. And so it was a real turning point, just one of those experiences in life that you actually never forget. And this teacher, some teachers do spiritual initiations in a very physical way. They facilitate them that way. And she was one of those teachers. And I remember watching my first one, and I was watching it online, and I felt every aspect of it. It was so fascinating. So, what is an initiation? Well, essentially, it's a spiritual step up into a new level of consciousness. So it's a process where you expand your consciousness. And it is a long progression. It's not an overnight thing. It's something that there are many, many steps. Some believe that there are hundreds of different levels. Most people don't experience anything beyond about 7 levels of initiation. But either way, it happens over the course of many, many lifetimes. So it's kind of an ongoing thing for most people. Many of you probably have heard of the ascended masters. And if you haven't, they are spiritually enlightened beings who were once human, but now they've transcended the cycle of reincarnation and they've achieved a higher state of consciousness. So you would be familiar with some of the ascended masters. They include Jesus or Yeshua, as he is also known, Mother Mary, Master Buddha, Isis, Hathor, Kali Ma, Saint Germain. There's so many. And they have initiated over and over again until they've reached the level of being this ascended master. And they all are associated with different energies. So it might be the spirit of wisdom or unconditional love or healing or teaching or leadership or alchemy or the divine feminine or the divine masculine or ascension or forgiveness. They all have their kind of specialty areas that they help the energy of our world evolve into. But essentially, they are deeply loving and wise beings who I aspire to be more like every day. And so the ascended masters, they are kind of like archetypes of the ultimate goal of initiation. And we can all make choices and take steps toward what would be our next initiation, whether we know it or not. We're all potentially initiating, and some of us are, focused on it and working toward it really strongly. If you listen to my podcast, you're probably in that camp. And then there are other people who are, unaware of it, uninterested in it. Even they are experiencing things that are moving them toward something. So in my work, I am a doorway. My work is a doorway or a portal way for those who are being called toward an initiation. And the first step of initiation is that call. So, going back to my experience with that spiritual teacher, when she was speaking about initiation, I had a deep awakening of my desire to pursue a deeper understanding of the world and to pursue this process of initiating. And sometimes this call happens from synchronicities, sometimes it's life challenges, sometimes it's inner promptings. Um, Often it's challenge. So it might be illness. I think of one of my clients. He was going through a really significant illness, and that was the doorway toward his call toward initiation. Many people are called toward this process when a loved one dies. So I know when my mom died, I had a real spiritual initiation during that time. I didn't recognize it at that time, but I can see it now in retrospect. Near-death experiences are definitely, they can lead to an initiation and often do. Something like a divorce, a loss of a job, or a business falling apart. So often the activation of the path toward initiation looks from the outside like it's something bad, but it's actually the beginning of a huge transformation. So after this stage of the call, then there's what's referred to as purification. And this is where you're letting go of the life that you used to live in order to step into the life you're moving toward. And this stage involves letting go of old patterns, old ways of being, belief systems. It's often a deeply painful process. There's just no getting around it. It's generally not that fun. It can have some good moments, but there's a lot of pain and release happening at this stage. You're facing your own shadow and accepting and integrating the parts of you that you might tend to reject or repress or deny. And it often involves letting go of relationships that are not a good fit. And this is where a lot of the pain comes in. We're often drawn during this stage toward a focus on energetic clearing. So, this is when people start getting sage and when they get trained in Reiki and, they're wanting to cleanse and clear their energy. And in general, it tends to be a time of solitude or retreat. It's often just a very quiet time where a lot is changing in you behind the scenes. So, either after this stage of purification or at the same time, there's often a period of transmission or empowerment from a teacher or a guide. And so this person provides spiritual wisdom, teaching, maybe healing, maybe support. They might do rituals or ceremonies. And so this is part of what I do, what I assist my clients with in initiation processes. There can sometimes be a focus on certain spiritual lineages that would support this person through this time. So there's so many lineages. There's the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, the Western mystery schools, there's the Isis mystery schools, there's the Dogon tribes in Africa, there's the indigenous medicine societies, the Hindu or yogic schools, the Sufis, the esoteric Christians, so many different options. And in our society today, many of the guides and the teachers are using channeled wisdom direct from their guides. and understandings from a combination of different approaches. So we're moving in many ways away from these like very strict lineages and lines, although they are definitely still important and relied upon. So when I work as a guide for initiation, I assist my clients in a number of ways. I help activate them. So I've spoken about this many times on the podcast, where when my clients work with me, I naturally, through my energetic field, I activate their gifting. So it might be heightened intuition. It might be healing gifts. It might be increased awareness or empathic sensitivity. It might be dream work. Might be more synchronicities happening in their life. Um, I was just thinking about, I did a 2-hour intensive with a client just a couple of days ago, and she described a number of these experiences, dreams, synchronicities, repeating numbers when I followed up with her a couple days after our session. So this is that activation. It's kind of like opening up to this evolution of spirit. And then I act as a conduit for transformation. So I work with my clients' guides to help my clients to evolve, and I facilitate the awakening of their consciousness. And it's an alchemical transfiguration. And I work on their energy field and help them to embody these shifts. And so it can be a hard thing to describe in verbal ways. It's something that is experienced more than, talked about. It can be just kind of difficult to communicate sometimes exactly what it is that I do, but people are transformed in my energetic field and begin to change. And I also, guide them. So I use my skills in um, counseling, my skills in energy healing, my skills in spiritual connection, all the different aspects of what I have done for many decades now in order to help them to experience this change and also integrate it into their lives. So that leads me into this final stage of the process, which is integration. And this is often the stage that's missing in spiritual work, that there can be like an activation and someone can have this huge spiritual step up where there's a really incredible experience. We sometimes see this in plant medicine ceremonies where there's a huge change, but the most important aspect of this change is to integrate it into one's life afterward. And this is often what is not done, yet it's incredibly important. So, there's a period of stabilization into this new way of being where you learn how to operate in the world in this new state. And when you evolve spiritually, it's an incredible honor. And with great power comes great responsibility, to quote Uncle Ben speaking to Spider-Man. So when we become more powerful as we initiate, we have to engage in the world in a way that is very value driven. I think of Jesus as one of the most recent ascended masters, and he had learned how to open up his chakras almost 360 degrees, which allowed him to be the most incredibly powerful healer of recent time, probably of all time. And he was an incredible teacher and an incredible manifester as well. And of course, Jesus was a wise and loving being. And we should all desire to embody even a portion of that loving energy that emanated from him. And this is a non-religious sense of Jesus. He is a guide to all of us who feel drawn to his work. But as we know, living in a loving way in this world is not always easy. And in our human bodies, we're flawed and we have an ego, which is really important for this 3D world. But it can also lead us to make choices that might not be in the highest good of everyone, right? And so this is one of the aspects of the integration experience, to be advised and be held by a guide when it comes to embodying all aspects of this new level of consciousness that you're experiencing, and to live in a loving way, to use this new evolution and new level of consciousness in a positive direction. So, initiation, it often requires of us to be of greater service to the world. So, if you think of the ascended masters, most of them lived a very challenging life, yet they gave and gave and gave to the world. So, it's important to recognize the initiatory path is not an easy one, but it's one that I personally wouldn't give up for anything in the world. And I'm so grateful that my role in this lifetime is to transform high achieving leaders into awakened forces of change through the process of initiation. So, before we wrap up for today, I want to share something special with those of you who are feeling called to make 2025 your breakthrough year. So this January, so this month, I'm opening up just a few spaces for Catalyze Intensives, which are powerful 2-hour containers where we'll clear the blocks that are holding you back and activate your highest vision for this year and beyond. So if you are a leader who has achieved success, but you sense that there's something bigger calling, and if you're ready to stop spinning and start manifesting your goals, this is for you. So in 2 hours together, we'll identify your root blocks, clear what's holding you back, and we will create clarity about your path forward. So if you want to learn more and apply for these intensives, you can visit thewisdomportal.ca or check out the link in the show notes. And as always, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.